doing? It's your boy Big D, and welcome to the very first edition of my Countdown series. This is a series that I've been wanting to do for the longest time, but I've never got around to doing it. This will be my top 5 favorite Philadelphia Eagles of all time. Like I said, I'm very excited about this. Haven't really gotten time to do so because I've been busy with work, but now I have some time. Little bit of a disclaimer. This has to be guys I've seen play, so that means no Randall Cunningham, no Reggie White, no Chuck Bednarik, no Bill Bergey, no Harold Carmichael. You get the idea. So without any further ado, let's get started. Before we begin the top 5, here's a few guys that I considered adding to the list, but I found didn't quite make the cut. Donovan McNabb, the quarterback of my childhood, although he was very fun to watch on a consistent basis throughout the regular season, unfortunately he never could quite get it done when it mattered the most. He will unfortunately be remembered as one of the biggest championship chokers of all time. Brandon Graham, arguably our best defensive player on the current squad. He is most known for strip sacking Tom Brady to seal our Super Bowl victory. Losing him last year was definitely a fatal blow, and it definitely hurt our defense last year. David Akers, in my opinion, the greatest kicker in Eagles history. He was definitely reliable when it came to game tying, game winning, or lead-taking field goals. And, of course, everybody remembers that speech in Dallas. Jason Kelce, one of the current team leaders, and there are many seasons where our offensive line was injured, but he was usually the last man standing. He almost rarely ever got hurt. And, of course, everybody remembers the Super Bowl parade when he wore that Mummers outfit. Man, that was a legendary speech. John Runyon, a beastly right tackle who held his own against the great Michael Strahan. And he wasn't too shabby as a politician either. Jordan Mailata, Thingamabob, Masked Singer, Bon Jovi, Dead or Alive, need I say more? And now let's get into our top 5.
Number 5.
Kicking off our list at number 5, I'm going with Lane Johnson. Everybody remembers the disastrous 2012 Eagles season where we had arguably the worst line in the league, although in all fairness, most of our starters were hurt. And we ended up finishing the season 4-12, going on, I believe, an 8-game losing streak. It was just a mess all around. And we ended up with the 4th overall pick, and the belief was we were going to take an offensive lineman, and we did just that. We drafted Lane Johnson. He didn't really do a lot in the beginning. He didn't really make too much of a name for himself, except for the times he got popped for PED violations. The first time he got 4 in 2014, and in 2016, it was I believe a 10-game suspension. And 2017, that was the year where he really made his mark. The one play that sticks out the most was when we were going up against the Denver Broncos and we dropped damn near 60 points on them. And there was one pivotal play where he was going up against Von Miller, a former Super Bowl MVP, and he just throws him aside like he's nothing. And he was also known, he was one of the 2 guys during our playoff run that year that broke out the German Shepherd masks, which ended up selling like crazy. This past season he did battle some mental health issues, but he was able to overcome them. And there was a nice play where he even caught a touchdown against the Giants from Jalen Hurts. And here's a fun fact about Lane Johnson. The past 3 years, he allowed a total 3 sacks. And the total number of sacks he allowed this past season, 0. That's insane. Definitely a ferocious competitor, always went at it, and his never back down attitude definitely makes him a fan favorite around here. But it also doesn't hurt that he's a friend of Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was even a guest on his podcast. Gotta watch the interview the next time I'm at work with my earphones in, if I can find it. So I got Lane Johnson at number 5.
Number 4.
At number 4, I got Jeremiah Trotter, the Axeman. The nickname Axeman comes from the fact that he lived in Texas and he chopped a lot of wood at a young age. He lost his father pretty early before he even played in the NFL, and it gave him this chip on his shoulder that he used to become one of the hardest tacklers in the league. A lot of the tackles that you've seen him do would never fly in today's league, where he would go head on with people. He would lower his head. A lot of heavy contact. He was so tough as nails that there was a story that once surfaced that he knocked LeVar Arrington out when he was with the Redskins. Although no one has really confirmed that, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was a true story. But every time his stint with the Redskins was pretty uneventful, and he came back to Philly and became a fan favorite once more, became a pivotal member of the team when we lost Mark Simoneau. Came back one more time in 2009 when we lost, I think he replaced Stuart Bradley. One of them replaced Stuart Bradley. I think it was him, and I think it was Will Witherspoon that replaced Omar Gaither. He really didn't do much in 2009 inside. It was just a little leadership role, but before he finally hung it up. He was a guy that I initially did not have in my top 10, but then I realized how little the Eagles have valued linebacker for the longest time. And this was a tradition that dates back to the mid-90s. And it's just insanely frustrating because that's my favorite position. And I would say that the best linebacker of my generation, of my lifetime, was definitely Jeremiah Trotter. He was a fierce competitor. He took no crap from anyone. Always went at it. And there's one tackle that he makes that most of our D-line can't even make, where he wraps his arms around the running back's waist. A lot of times the tackle gets easily shaken off, but he was strong enough to still find a way to bring them to the ground. And fun fact, of all the Eagle greats, he's actually the heaviest. So yeah, I have Jeremiah Trotter at number 4.
Number 3.
All right, running at number 3, I got Brian Westbrook. My God, was he fun to watch. Fun fact about him, when he was a rookie, he didn't really have that memorable of a season. I mean, he did throw a touchdown pass to Todd Pinkston in a blowout against the Cowboys. During his rookie season, Hugh Douglas used to haze him. It was kind of a rookie thing where he would make Westbrook make him tapioca pudding, and he would yell at him, "Oh man, you're burning the pudding." It was 2003 where he really made his mark with a game sealer against the Buffalo Bills, where he shook off multiple tackles against the Dolphins, where I believe he caught a touchdown pass from Freddie Mitchell. And a lot of those plays where Brian Westbrook gets a touchdown or gets a big yard gain, you'll see his sock pulled down quite often because they try to tackle him like that, but he slips out of it quite easily, including from the likes of Zach Thomas. Unfortunately, he got injured, and the reliance on Westbrook really showed in the playoffs, where we kind of struggled against the Packers and we had to rely on a 4th and 26 in order to beat them, and a game-sealing interception in overtime by Brian Dawkins. And we could only score 3 points against the Panthers, who scored 14. But Hugh Douglas comes back in 2004, and they were talking in the locker room, and Brian Westbrook asked him, "How did you do in Jacksonville?" And something to that effect. And Hugh Douglas was like, "I only had 3 sacks, but they were good sacks." And Westbrook looks right back at him and says, I had 13 touchdowns. Hands him a wooden spoon. Now make me some tapioca. And Westbrook's dominance continued, including I believe he is the first running back in Eagles history to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. McNabb lasered that ball right through 2 defenders and hit Brian Westbrook for that touchdown. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the job done, but it was still a memorable play nonetheless. Westbrook would eventually continue to run over the league until 2008, where injuries started to really catch up to him. I mean, he still had some good, memorable plays like 2008 against the Vikings, but by 2009 he got 2 concussions, and we let him go, and he had one stint with the 49ers before finally retiring. In my opinion, one of the best running backs in Eagles history. He's right up there with Montgomery. And in 2009, he was able to pass the torch to 𝔡'𝔞𝔯𝔯𝔦, another all-time great. He was insanely fun to watch, and he was also very good to play with in ESPN NFL 2K5, in my opinion, the greatest football game they ever made. So I have Brian Westbrook at number 3.
Number 2.
At number 2, yeah, that's right, Nick Foles. Where do we even begin? Well, the rookie season, he started to really get some attention. I remember people talking about how great he was during the preseason and believed that he should start over Michael Vick. Michael Vick initially got the job and the aforementioned 8-game losing streak, which Vick started the first of. And after the Saints game, the calls for Nick Foles to start started to really fire up. And then Michael Vick gets hurt because of that bad O-line against Dallas, and Nick Foles comes in and he was able to show us what he could really do. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out, but Foles definitely showed some flashes of talent. He only was able to win one start, and that was against the Buccaneers during the decade-long anniversary of their Super Bowl win. Pretty fitting, if you ask me. But it wasn't until 2013 where he really made his mark, where Michael Vick got injured yet again. I mean, that was the theme of Michael Vick during his Eagles career, is he got injured almost all the time, and this was no exception. Nick Foles came in and started throwing lasers left and right. His favorite targets that year were Deshaun Jackson and Riley Cooper, although Brent Selleck got some good touches, and even the rookie Zach Ertz was able to. Nick Foles had a philosophy. He had this point guard mentality. He liked to spread the ball around. He didn't like to rely on one guy. He didn't like to throw to one guy all the time, and I really liked that because it kept teams guessing. The game that stands out the most that year was the 7-touchdown game against the Raiders, which I believe is tied for an NFL record. In 2014, he was able to get us to 8-3. I believe it was 8. I believe we were 8. I believe we were like something to that effect. I don't remember the exact number. I think he either won 7 or 8 games. Because I forgot about that Panthers game that Sanchez started in. And we almost went to the playoffs again. He still found, he was a turnover machine that year, but he still found ways to win games. And I believe we would have made the playoffs had he not won, but what we would have done in it, I don't really know. And then Chip Kelly decides it was a good idea to trade him to the Rams for that injury-prone bum Sam Bradford, although you can make the argument that Nick Foles was injury-prone throughout the course of his career. And Nick Foles nearly quit football because of the way Jeff Fisher handled him, although some of it may have been his fault as well. But Andy Reid talked him out of retirement and signed him with the Chiefs, where he played pretty solid when filling in for Alex Smith. But unfortunately, the Chiefs couldn't really keep him, and Reid just told Foles, hey, listen, go to Philadelphia, they'll give you an opportunity. And that year, when Carson Wentz was the starting quarterback and we went on an 11-2 record, and then he gets hurt against the Rams for trying to dive for a touchdown. Some believe he made a stupid decision. Some others believe it was a freak accident. Nick Foles came in and managed the game. He managed the rest of the game. He didn't really do much in that game, but he managed it enough for us to hold on to the win. He didn't really look all that great starting out, and he was insanely frustrating in that game against the Raiders. And then that Super Bowl run, he didn't really look all that good against the Falcons, but he managed to win. And against the Vikings, where he's really started, throwing bombs left and right. Super Bowl, more or less the same. He outdueled Brady. He made as little mistakes as possible, but he found a way to win. He was the very first Super Bowl MVP. And he started the very first game. I was at that game against the Falcons, the season opener. He didn't really look all that great then, but the play he's remembered most for is the Philly special, and he did it again against the Falcons. He did it in the Super Bowl at the end of the second quarter on 4th and goal, and then he did it again against the Falcons. And when Carson Wentz got injured yet again after looking like a shell of his former self, which would be the theme for the rest of his career, Nick Foles came in, goes on that winning streak, and almost takes us back. Although he didn't really look all that good against the Saints, which just so happened to be his kryptonite. He almost did it, but unfortunately Alshon Jeffrey couldn't hold on to that ball. And that was where his career ended. He did win some games with the Bears. His starting position didn't really work out that well for Jacksonville. Whether he was meant to be the long-term starter for the Eagles or not, whether he was meant to be the real starter, whatever you think, the bottom line is, when it mattered, when we needed it to happen, Nick Foles got us our first Super Bowl. And fun fact, I believe Nick Foles has a 23-14 overall record as a starter for the Eagles. Regardless of what anybody thinks, the bottom line is Nick Foles is a winner. And you would think, because he's the first Super Bowl winner, he's the very first Super Bowl MVP in Eagles history, you would think he would be number one. Well, I hate to break it to you, but he's not. This is
Number 1.
number one. And you're probably not even the least bit surprised by this, because it's a consensus. Brian Dawkins. Where do we even begin? He bases who he is off the field and on the field as he treats them as two separate entities. Off the field, he's who he is in real life, a good guy, a man of God, all that good stuff. On the field, he was that fierce competitor who put the fear of God into many he went up against and left a lasting impression on anybody who stepped foot on that football field, whether it be an opponent or even teammates. He based this off Wolverine, hence the moniker Weapon X. His general playing style, his football philosophy, instead of being a guy who tries to look for the football in order to pick it off, although he's perfectly capable of doing so, as proven in the aforementioned 4th and 26 game where he picked off Brett Favre in overtime, his preferred style is to look for the receiver, wait for him to catch the ball, and hit him as hard as possible, whether it be Darrell Jackson at the goal line forcing an incompletion, although Al Harris should have had that interception. That's among many memorable plays, whether it be him swatting the ball from Ben Roethlisberger and then scooping it up immediately afterward, or that flying clothesline on Tim Carter, or charging Jerome Bettis head on, hitting him, sending him the other direction, or German suplexing Cliff Branch, or that infamous hit on Algie Crumpler in the 2004-2005 NFC title game against the Falcons. He's had a lot of memorable highlights. He was the most important part of that Jim Johnson defense, and is the main reason it was as legendary as it was. Don't get me wrong, Jim Johnson was a legendary defensive genius for sure. I mean, he had many great players. He had many good players like Hugh Douglas, Javon Curse, Corey Simon, the aforementioned Jeremiah Trotter, Lito Shepherd, Sheldon Brown, Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor. The list goes on. But Brian Dawkins was the straw that stirred the drink. And he was the type of guy that could that could shape a look of a defense with his mere presence alone. There were many seasons we could talk about, but it's usually individual plays that we remember him the most for. He's racked up a ton of highlights, being the 2020 club, being the first player to be in the 30-30 club, 30 interceptions and 30 forced fumbles, the first player to record an interception, a sack, a forced fumble, and a touchdown in a single game. He did this against the Texans in 2002 off a fake punt. And he's the only player in NFL history with 36 forced fumbles. He's the only safety. The year that sticks out the most for me was 2008, where our offense was kind of struggling. McNabb was like reaching the twilight of his career. he was starting to wind down because his body just wasn't holding up anymore, and he was broken both physically and mentally as well. Although he still was a fun-loving guy, but his competitive drive wasn't really as much there as it was. Although people always called that into question, but it was really bad at that point. But our defense played a pivotal role helping us get over the finish line, whether it be him forcing Marion Barber to fumble twice in that 44-6 ravaging of the Dallas Cowboys, one of the most memorable games in Eagles history, or him forcing a goal, fourth and inches stand against the Giants, definitely played a huge role in us beating them. It's a shame our defense didn't really hold up. It eventually lost its magic by the time we faced the Cardinals. It was the time where we actually needed our offense to come through, and it wasn't enough. But the part that really is memorable was that video package, Best of Brian Dawkins 2008. Go look it up on YouTube. It was all the highlights from the 2008 season. Him giving those motivational speeches. The part that sticks out the most in that was when you hear the audio of his motivational speeches in the background. You see all the other Eagles players doing stuff, whether it be Sheldon Brown with that hit on Steven Jackson where his helmet came off, or Trent Cole dropping a Cardinals player, or Eli Manning getting sacked, or tackling Seattle for a loss, which would be the last time we would beat Seattle, by the way. With the music, the whole 9 yards. I mean, he was set to be a free agent that year, and we needed to keep him. I remember like it was yesterday. I was at a restaurant getting some chicken wings, and I see on the TV screen that he signed with the Broncos. I was livid. I'm like, how could you let this happen? He would go on to spend 3 seasons with the Broncos, including a return to Philadelphia where we beat them, before finally hanging it up. And he retired as an Eagle, and he would go on to be an executive. Jim Johnson that year in 2008, he was battling cancer at the time, which ultimately did him in. Sean McDermott was set to be a successor, but he didn't really find much of the same success, although he did have some good defenses, but they didn't really give him that much time. And it just wasn't the same without Dawkins. I mean, the closest guy we've had to Brian Dawkins was Malcolm Jenkins, who was memorable for a hit of his own, knocking Brandon Cooks out of the game. Brian Dawkins was an executive for that team in 2017, so he does have a Super Bowl ring. Thank God. He should have gotten one as a player, but it is what it is. So there you have it. Brian Dawkins is my favorite Philadelphia Eagle of all time. The end. All right, to recap this countdown, at number 5, I got Lane Johnson. At number 4, I got Jeremiah Trotter. At number 3, I got Brian Westbrook. At number 2, I got the very first Super Bowl MVP, Nick Foles. And at number 1, I have the legend, Brian Dawkins. Nick Foles and Brian Dawkins are my 2 favorite players of all time. I don't have a Brian Dawkins jersey yet. I'm not really a jersey wearer anymore, but I do have a Nick Foles one. I do want to get a Brian Dawkins one day, maybe get an autograph from him one day, but that remains to be seen. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for watching this. I'm sorry it wasn't as long. I wanted to make it short and sweet because but maybe in the future I'll do a remastered version where it's a full top 10. There may be some top 10s here and there, maybe top 5, maybe based on how many. It's not just going to keep being top 5s and then be top 10. It's going to have range in the beginning. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the future. Peace and chicken grease.